Hi, I'm Carter Casey, and this is my informative speech for oral communication. It's titled Change into a Hero, and it is the history of the tokusatsu genre of entertainment from Japan. A brief history about tokusatsu in America. Its most recognizable facet would be Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a staple of 90s children's culture. It was adapted from a tokusatsu show in Japan called Super Sentai. Tokusatsu basically means, it literally means special effects in Japanese, but the genre is basically people in cool looking suits doing flips and stuff and fighting with swords, that sort of thing. Again, most recognizable as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. In the first example of like widespread tokusatsu fame is with the Godzilla films, like with the '60s first Godzilla film. That actually takes the special effects, meaning quite literally as the main effect is Godzilla himself. He's a dude in a giant rubber suit attacking a city. Now, his influences can be felt way later in Super Sentai with giant monsters attacking a city and them making a giant robot to fight him. Godzilla is still a popular character and he's still considered tokusatsu, but the genre is more focused on the big three, which I will get into. The big three of the tokusatsu genre came in the Showa era, which is the 70s to late 90s of Japanese history. The first to come is Ultraman, this guy. His contributions to the genre were turning giant, he would turn huge and like morph and turn into this dude, and then he would fight a big monster. That's kind of where the Godzilla stuff came into play. The next to come would be Kamen Rider, right here in the middle, my personal favorite. He would bring to the genre riding around in cool vehicles. The Kamen Rider refers to him, Kamen means mask, so he would wear a mask and then ride a motorcycle around and fight bad guys, and he introduced sort of the change into him. He would use his belt and utter henshin, which means transform in Japanese, and he would turn into the suit you see now and a bug theme is always kind of present. And the last, but probably most famous, is the Super Sentai, which introduced team fighting to the genre, which would later become Power Rangers, and the giant robots that would fight the monsters that would be formed from smaller monsters. These three are still around today. There's new series coming in each show. They're still incredibly popular in Japan, and they're giant cultural icons. They're fantastic. When they came to the 90s, it comes to the 90s, this man, Haim Saban, decides, hey, we can take the footage from that show and add our own American footage and adapt it into a children's TV show. So he, starting with this show, which is a Super Sentai show called Zyuranger, he adapted it into the first season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. They would take the fighting bits of Zyuranger and they would keep those the same, but instead of having the Japanese people in their live action skits, they would change lines and stuff and record their own dialogue and with new actors and put that into the show. Haim Saban decided, well, if we do this with Super Sentai, we can surely do it with other Japanese tokusatsu shows. This was wrong. None of them are still around. The only one around today still is Power Rangers. Some failed adaptations include Big Bad Beetleborgs, which is a show nobody's ever heard of. It's an adaptation of a Japanese show called Metal Heroes. Masked Rider, which was a failed one-season show from the 90s that tried to adapt Kamen Rider. And VR Troopers, which only also had one season, I believe, and tried to adapt 3 shows into one. None of these shows were successful, and the only one, again, going today is still Power Rangers. And even now and then, Power Rangers takes a dip in popularity. Tokusatsu as a genre can be felt in the American film industry with its influences. We have American adaptations of Tokusatsu with Godzilla and King Kong and all of these other movies. We have our own original ideas like Pacific Rim, which borrows heavily from tokusatsu with giant monsters fighting giant robots. And of course, with superhero comics and films, the idea of a superhero team was quickly popularized in Japan with Super Sentai, which would lead to the Avengers and everyone else copying and being influenced by them. Quick note, a big actual Japanese adaptation of an American thing, there is a tokusatsu show of Spider-Man where he drives a giant robot and fights giant monsters. It's incredibly strange and amazing and one of my favorite things that's ever existed. Cool, my PowerPoint's gone out. In recent years, tokusatsu as a genre has continued to be popular. They're still getting TV shows. Kamen Rider is enjoying a giant resurgence in Japan after dipping. In recent years, tokusatsu has still been incredibly popular in Japan. This is my own personal collection of Kamen Rider figures. These are all very recently made. These two right here, Kamen Rider 01 and Kamen Rider Build, are from the last 3 years. Kamen Rider is sort of a cultural institution. People in Japan love Kamen Rider. And on the American side of things, people are trying to bring it even more streamlined to America with actual American just adaptations of shows. Like it's just the Japanese show with English subtitles. They're just trying to get it more accurate. Like the company, they're called Shout Factory, and they do these sub-releases of just regular Super Sentai shows like Chojin Sentai Jetman. Bringing up that again, there's a company called Bluefin Brands, and they're bringing over Japanese-only figures of Kamen Riders because there's no figures over here because the show doesn't exist. Like this one of Kamen Rider 01 is a Bluefin figure that I ordered, and I'm incredibly grateful that these initiatives to bring them to the States is being successful. I chose the topic of tokusatsu, the genre of entertainment, to show to the class because I think it's incredibly interesting, and I think it's a cool way to examine just sort of how things from other cultures get blended into ours. For example, Kamen Rider might not be, popular over here, but its influences can be felt in even giant movies like Avengers. Ant-Man his suit in those movies is based on some Kamen Rider suits. His suit is particularly incredibly similar to Kamen Rider 5's right here. And tokusatsu is just close to me in general, and I just love the style and sense of wonder that it brings to children and to adult fans alike. Thank you.